Thanks, sir. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. First and foremost, I want to take this opportunity to thank Mrs. Keene and the Isle of Wight Citizens Association for putting on this forum. Obviously, since the Newtown, Connecticut shootings, there has been a lot of discussion. This has occupied a lot of discussion, both locally, regionally, state, and nationally. I want to just first start off by saying that we certainly here at the Isle of Wight Sheriff's Office, and I think law enforcement, local law enforcement, have a strong commitment to ensuring that our children are safe and secure in the educational environment. We have Chief Bowman with the Smithfield Police Department here, and I certainly don't want to speak on behalf of him, but I know him and the organization, Windsor Police Department, the State Police, the agencies that do serve the local interest here in Isle of Wight County are committed to that end. From a historical perspective, both of my kids are products of the Isle of Wight school system, so I get it. I had a vested interest then, and I certainly maintain that many of my colleagues, and my co-workers, my friends have students in the system, so I have a pretty good handle on the pulse of what's going on there. Now, we have that commitment, and I need to talk a little bit. Obviously, I ended up taking office in 2012. An office that was underfunded, understaffed, and under-resourced. But clearly, with a mandate in which there needed to be a change, some significant changes. And it's a mission that the Sheriff's Office has is very broad. And while I obviously came from the local law enforcement environment in which we had law enforcement responsibility for the 12 square miles here in Smithfield, I now found myself in 316 square miles with not only law enforcement responsibilities, and those are prevent, deter crime. I mean, these are core mission pieces: prevent, deter crime, investigate crime, respond to calls for service. Core pieces. Additionally, we also have some statutory obligations such as court security, civil process, etc. But when we came in, we wanted to make sure that while we knew that we were underfunded, we were under-resourced, that we took a look at the data, that we analyzed what we had so that we could make a report to the elected leadership and to the citizens. And to that end, we did. Now, in Isle of Wight County, all of the schools had up until 2012 had a school resource officer. There's a historical basis that had been done by the previous board, but we obviously had some personnel deficits that we had to take care of right away to be able to handle those core pieces. And so we were able to still maintain the presence in the high school and the middle schools. We went about doing this organizational assessment to try to get it back to the Board of Supervisors, back out to the public as to what really was going on with the Sheriff's Office. To that end, within 6 weeks, we put together an organizational assessment and presented it to the board and to the public. And what that did is it compared three different things. It compared, A, what was our current staffing level? What were our calls for service? What was the population? And what was the geographical location? Because geography does play into how we can respond. And so that was the methodology. What we took is we took here in the Hampton Roads area, surrounding agencies that were contiguous or within our own borders. We looked at agencies that had similar characteristics, like Gloucester County, that has almost the identical population. We looked at what were the law enforcement services, what did they have to be able to do the calls for service, and how many calls for service. And what we found is that we had in 2011 that we were responding to over 40,000 calls for service. Now, that may be meaningless to you all, but when you take it and you compare it to other jurisdictions, and you look at the cities, for example, Newport News, that has many more calls for service, fortunately, but many more officers, 413 sworn, we found that the deputies were having it was difficult to be able to adequately service with the existing staff. And so we took that to the elected leadership of the board of supervisors. That we had deficits not only in staffing, but we had basic equipment, cars, bulletproof vests, ammo, first aid equipment, fire extinguishers, basic stuff that for whatever reason had not been taken care of adequately. We presented those findings to the board and made several recommendations. First, we had to redeploy. We ended up redeploying those SROs that were in the elementary schools back out on the road, back to our core mission, We asked the board, and fortunately for us, the board made an emergency appropriation to get some of that basic equipment. We asked for a significant, let me tell you, coming into 2012, with the economy being what it was, and asking for an increase in a budget, we knew it was going to be very, very difficult. But we were at critical mass, and the data spoke for itself, and the mandate spoke for itself. And the board rose to the occasion. It was certainly not a rubber stamp. There were lots of questions, a lot of discussion, and while other departments did have suffered cuts, we were able to get some of those emergency appropriations and that increase in the budget, with the expectation that we would need to come back and continue to look at some additional staffing. We knew we couldn't get it done all at once, but we wanted to put into an incremental plan, a plan in which we could make sure that we were able to ensure that basic services, core mission services, were taken care of. And so we did that. Now, we are now at our full authorized staffing. So what does that mean? That means I've got 45 deputies, 45 sworn, that includes myself, to be able to handle those 40,000 calls for service. Now, several of those deputies, over 6 of those deputies, are assigned to the court services, with another 5 that are assigned to investigations. So that leaves not a whole lot of folks when you have that administrative staff and you've got 360 square miles to do. I came to the board, and both the school board, and I know we've got members of the school board here, and we said we are not going to be able, with the existing staffing, and the board committed to giving us the additional positions, the 45, and continuing to look, because really our staffing should be at 50 deputies. That's where we have to be able to meet our minimum law enforcement response, or our service response. We needed to be at that 50 sworn mark. When we came in, we said that we would continue to maintain the presence, the full-time presence in the schools with the SROs. And so we assigned to both the high schools and then 1 SRO back and forth to both of the middle schools. We also committed that we would maintain that presence in the elementary schools. Although, with the existing staffing, we simply could not sustain a full-time presence in there. We ended up doing it and coming through it. And to date, and this is before Sandy Hook, we had in all of those schools, I don't mean to throw so many numbers, but we had 579 school checks with the road deputies. That's exclusive of the SROs. We spent over 308 hours before Sandy Hook in the schools. That means that not only did the deputies go through the schools, into the parking lots, but they parked their cars, they got out, they talked to administrators. They went into the cafeteria, they went into the auditorium, they roamed the hallways, went into some of the classrooms. So we had, that equates, well, you may say, well, that's not terribly significant. That's about a half an hour, when you average it out, about a half an hour per contact. And we do that every single day. We promised to maintain that, and I think we were able to deliver. We also, in 2012, reaffirmed our commitment to the partnership piece, and that is working with the other law enforcement agencies, like Smithfield Police Department, Windsor Police Department, to utilize the resources that they have. And they have risen to that occasion as well. Smithfield certainly takes care of Westside Elementary School. We called them, and of course, in the event that we had a catastrophic event, they would end up, everybody would be responding to those type of events. I know that there will be some discussion tonight about the role of the SROs, the security piece of schools. I will tell you that while Wight, up until 2012, for a couple of years, did have a school resource officer, it was probably, I know of no other school system that had it. Now, I get that piece. As a police chief, I ended up, our agency actually worked on a federal grant. We had the first school resource officer in this county. At the time, it was Smithfield Middle School, which is now Westside Elementary. We were working with Ron Reese and the administration way back in the day. I get it with the school resource officers. I understand the value that they can provide, the intelligence piece, the relationships, the partnerships, and that security piece. What we will have to talk about at some point in this discussion maybe is can we maintain that in all 9 of our schools? And that's what we have. We have 5 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 2 high schools. I will tell you that when you look at the data, and you look at the data in mass killers, they're hard. The data is whether these are people that would kill 4 or more people as defined by the FBI. I will tell you it's a tragedy. It's tough for us to wrap our brains around it. How do you prevent it? And I'm certainly here to talk that there is a value in deterrence, in having a marked unit, in having somebody, a trained, uniformed officer in every school. But will that actually, in the event that we have somebody that is bent on a murderous rampage, will that actually prevent that violence? I don't know. That's a $1 million question that I can't answer. I will reaffirm that our commitment is to ensure the safety and security of all students. We've been working with the school system, with Ms. Pereira, with the school administration, with Smithfield Police Department, Windsor Police Department, on our plans, on our response plans. We had already set into place active shooter training that we've been doing at Westside Elementary before the Sandy Hook, and certainly we've been implementing that, and we continue to do that basic training. We'll continue to do those things, but at the end, some of this is going to be about mental health. We also, every one of us in this room, have to participate. Because one of the common denominators on any one of these school shooters, or any one of these people that are involved in mass killings, is that usually someone had an inkling, someone knew. There were certain behaviors that were being exhibited that a family member, a friend, a teacher, a colleague picked up on, but wasn't reported. There have been a number of successes, and those successes you don't hear about, in which that intelligence, that information did come to law enforcement. That's the way we're really going to get around this. I don't know that there are other things. I know that there are other pieces that come into this, and we can talk about video violence, mental health, and all these other things. But when you have that crazy, somebody that has decided to make that leap, to go and go for it, there are almost always behaviors that are exhibited and that are communicated to someone. We have to be able to intervene. And that involves the children, the parents, the teachers, all of us in this room, if we're going to be able to successfully intervene in a catastrophic event such as Sandy Hook. Thanks, and I look forward to the continuing discussion.
We're lucky to have a dedicated professional like Mark as our sheriff. He had the experience also as being the president of the International Police Chiefs Association. So you can see, it's like you said, he's really trying to wrap his brain and arms and all of his force around the problem, and we appreciate that. Next, we'll have Reverend Dr. James Harrison, the minister of Main Street Baptist Church.
Good evening. Good evening. All Wight citizens,